Hello everyone, good evening. Welcome to the webinar. We're just giving a couple of minutes for people to join both on the webinar link, as well as we've got a few people I think who are logging on via YouTube as well. I'm Anthony Llewellyn. Some of you know me as the Career Doctor from YouTube. I'm one of the founders of Advanced Med, and we're hosting this webinar tonight, this event, to help you with the process of creating your medical CV for doctor job applications in 2019. So we've got about 40 participants online already, expecting probably over 100 from the registration numbers. So we might give it a little bit longer. Okay, well, look, we'll get started to reward those who are punctual. Now, sometimes there's a little bit of a slight pause while I get the slides moving. So welcome to this webinar. We're hoping that you'll get quite a few outcomes out of participating in this webinar. Hopefully you've looked at the event page and some of the suggestions about how to get the best out of the webinar. Or read the emails. So I'll just remind you that it's a very good idea to have preferably a printed out version of your CV in front of you with a pen, or maybe sitting on your computer, or at the very least grab a notepad, because we hope that you're going to get some, and I think you will get some actionable points out of this event. Things that you can do that will dramatically improve the look and readability and acceptability of your curriculum vitae. If there's one thing that comes out of this webinar tonight, it is that it's very critical to focus on the first page of your CV. You get some other tips and pointers, but if you remember one thing, that's it. The first page of your CV is the most vital component of your CV. I'd also like to just quickly acknowledge that I'm presenting on a Wabakal country and pay my respect to elders past and present and emerging, and also recognise that sometimes on these webinars we do have Indigenous doctor trainee or medical students participating, and I warmly welcome yourselves. Now you may be watching on YouTube, or you may be watching via the webinar. In either case, there is an option for asking questions. Basically, there's a chat box where you can type a question, and there will be set times during the webinar where we'll do some answers. Now, given the number of people participating, it's probably not going to be possible to cover all questions, but we will have a process for following up any unanswered questions after the webinar as well. And actually, while I'm thinking about it, I might just pop the link to the Visual CV Builder. So you should be able to see that coming through now on your screen as well, in case you haven't checked that link out at this point. Can I please raise my voice? Yes, I can. I'll just get a little closer to the microphone. Is that better for you? Okay. And just while we're on it, oh, sorry, go too quickly there. If everything so far is clear for you, could you just type a plus in the chat box there? Thank you. Great. Lots of pluses there. Brilliant. And I'm looking, I've just noticed I've got a little microphone level on my screen, so I can try and hit the top of that every time I talk, and hopefully that will improve the audibility of everything. So thank you for pointing that out, Ziz. Great. Lots of pluses there. All right. So, as I said, I want to give you some help in your medical career. My motto is about helping you manage your medical career. If you've watched any of the videos on YouTube, it's kind of what I say every time, and I'm truly that's really what I'm about. So, I would really like you to be able to take 2 or 3 actionable points away from tonight about how to improve your CV or resume, and we'll get into the difference between CV or resume shortly. Now, I'd love to just dive into what should go into your CV, and we will do that. But before that, we're going to just cover a few misconceptions that sort of trip people up in the CV process. And I think it's important to sort of go over those points because I see it a lot with doctors making these sort of mistakes about certain things. So we'll do that first. Then we'll talk about what matters in your CV. There will be a strong emphasis on narrative, telling a story, writing about yourself, and why that's important. Getting the front page right and what should be on that vital front page. And then towards the end of the webinar, we'll dive into, whether you should use, a word processor or maybe check out some of these online tools that might be handy in terms of compiling a CV and putting it in a professional format. And we will, of course, touch on some resources as well. Okay, so my story, my background is in psychiatry, but even when I was training 20 odd years ago, I was getting into medical management. I started off solving a little bit of a challenge in my local service. Many of you know that psychiatry is not a particularly popular specialty to be in. And so I looked at the issues about recruiting psychiatry trainees and psychiatrists to work in the service. And I got quite good at it. And obviously in doing that, I became very experienced in the whole selection, recruitment, onboarding process. And, I learned along the way, and I know I'd made some mistakes. So I started by solving sort of medical management HR issues. Then I sort of went on to other sort of executive and leadership roles. Some of you would know that for 4 years recently, I was the executive medical director of a group called the Health Education and Training Institute in New South Wales. That was a really cool job, which I did for 4 years. We did things like allocate the internships in New South Wales, over 1,000 now. But some of the stuff I did was help set up training networks, including recruiting trainees, looking at issues around medical manager training as well. And it was evident to me that on both sides of the selection table, there was very little understanding of best practice and how to, if you're a job candidate, how to sell yourself well. And unfortunately, from the other side, if you're a doctor sitting on the interview panel, what's the sort of things you should be doing and thinking about doing to improve your chances of getting the right candidate for a job. And then a few years ago, I've got a young family, so I moved back to Newcastle and I started working directly both with employers as well as the job candidates, the doctors. And I really enjoy working directly with doctors on their career challenges. We've now run 3 workshops in 2 years. We've developed some courses for medical careers, which I'll share a little bit about with you towards the end. We've done a lot of CV reviews. I've probably seen 10,000 CVs in my lifetime. And I do a lot of coaching now, and I'm a certified coach. So, my pleasure is to sort of work with other doctors to try and help them with some of these challenges. And so I've seen a bunch of CVs and I've seen a bunch of resumes, and I've kind of become a CV nerd. And many of you would have read a blog post or seen a blog post about that. Now, before I go further, I just wanted to declare some interests. Often on these events, we might have students or obviously doctors. I have affiliations with the Universities of Newcastle and New England and Hunter New England Health. And so if you're a student that I work with, or a trainee doctor or a doctor colleague that I work with, you're welcome here, and I think you'll get a lot out of it. I will be talking about some of the services that we offer through Advanced Med, and so what I would say to you is that my standing principle is to not charge anyone that is a student of mine or a doctor colleague of mine in a service. So if you're interested in any of those particular services, just contact me through those particular channels. Sorry. And so that leads me into pointing out that we do have an offer on our CV course and CV review for the next 48 hours. You'll be able to, excuse me, you'll be able to get access to that. And so I'll just pop that up in your box there now. So you've got that link. So if you're interested in getting some help on CV reviews or CV courses, that's there for you available. So during this webinar, I'll be showing some various versions of CVs. Some of these will be de-identified, some of these will just be plainly made up. And obviously I'm doing, I've making sure that I don't use anything that would personally identify anyone. But I want to point out that you do see a bunch and a range of CVs, and they can be dramatically improved from the sort of thing that you're seeing there on your screen to something a little bit more like this. And this is a CV that I worked with an international doctor. So I've changed, again, I've changed the personal details, but you can kind of see how you can actually get a pretty nice looking, but also content-wise, better CV with actually not a lot of effort. And you can do all this yourself. If you choose to watch the videos that I produce, read the blog posts that I write, I'm pretty confident that you can go away and come up with a pretty bang good CV. And so if you're wanting some additional resources, as I said, hopefully you've got your CV out in front of you and already making some notes. Google, I've written a blog post called How to Write a Medical CV Ultimate Guide. Google that, that'll come up for you. That's about 5,000 words about how to structure your CV. And as I said, try the free sign up link to Visual CV. Give that a bit of a go, because that might also be helpful for you as well. So a reminder about questions. You'll be able to ask question. We can ask a question at any time, and I'll answer them at set times. So again, if everything's making sense to people, stick a Y in the chat box for me. Thank you. Great. Brilliant. So we're coming up to question time fairly shortly. So I talked about misconceptions, so I want to get into that now. So this is the guts of the webinar. CV resume. For many years, I used to wonder why certain doctors from certain countries would send me, when I was in the employer role or the recruiter role, a very long CV that was not tailored to the job description. And then I understood what was going on, because you see, the technical correct form of curriculum vitae comes from the Latin meaning course of life. And so a CV should actually literally be everything about your career. All your work history in detail, or your educational history in detail, your professional development, skills, conferences, papers, etc. So you can see how doctors in particular, over not too many years in their career, could compile a fairly seriously long CV. Versus resume, which comes from the French meaning to interrupt, is literally a very tailored version of your career. So it's something where you sit down and you can, to some extent, choose what goes into that in terms of what you think the employer would be most interested in hearing about you. So the issue here is, when you apply for a medical job in Australia, you get asked for a CV. But actually what the employer is after is not a CV. So what's going on there? Well, I don't really know. To be honest, it's probably one of those typical Australian things where we call something what it isn't. But clearly what we're actually asking you to deliver is not so much a CV, it's probably closer to what a resume is properly, although there are some critical things that need to go into it. So here are the critical points. As I say, it's actually more like a resume. It actually doesn't matter what you call it. In fact, I wouldn't bother putting resume or curriculum vitae on the top. That's just a waste of a line. The employer will know what the document is meant for. But don't get too caught up in the length. If you watch videos on YouTube about resumes, you'll come across some American bloggers, and they'll tell you that a resume should be no more than 2 pages. And I've recently seen some where they say it should be no more than 1 page. And if you can't synthesize it down, then you're no good. I think that's actually rubbish. A CV or resume should be as long as it needs to be and no longer. And so because the front page is the most critical bit, to some extent, it doesn't matter how many other pages you've got after that. Generally, I find most doctors can get it down to 4 pages, and that's fine. It's 2 pages printed out double-sided from a printer, and no one's going to quibble with that. But, who had a longer career, 5, 6 pages is okay too. And maybe if you're just a medical student, you can get it down to 2 pages, and then, good on you if you can do that. But don't get too caught up in the length. It is, though, meant to be tailored and shortened, so it's not got absolutely everything in it, particularly if you feel it's not relevant to the job. But there should be certain information there, and you really should have all your work history. We really want to see particularly all your medical career history there, but I would include any substantive position, and I think that's a good point because often people have done things before medicine, and actually employers like to see a bit of breadth and life outside of medicine. So if they see a job from before going to medical school, they'll be interested in that and what sort of additional skills you might have gained doing that sort of employment. Obviously, all your qualifications, you should definitely explain any gaps in your work history. And we generally expect that you will list referees on your CV. Often on some resumes, particularly the ones in the US, they won't put referees down. That'll be like something that happens a bit later. But generally expecting that you will list 3 so that it's all comprehensive. We know who you've got there. So we're just going to swap over now to a web page. And I want you to have a think about what you see in this following CV. And there are 5 key errors in this CV. Just got to bring up the right page here. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. So this is, by the way, a CV that you can generate using Visual CV. Many people have seen examples of these that I've been posting on my blog sites. So yeah, I'd be interested to see what thoughts people might have about that. Any ideas about what might be wrong or what might be some of the errors with that particular CV that you see there in front of you? To show you down a bit lower. No takers? Okay, well, let's dive into it. Okay, let's start with the first problem. Let's start with a photo. There are 3 reasons why you should never include a photo on your CV as a doctor, and only 1 reason why you should. Let's start with the reason why you should. In some very special circumstances, they actually request a photo on your CV. So if they say it has to be there, obviously you put 1 down. But other than that, I would absolutely avoid putting a photo down for 3 key reasons. The first one is medicine is a conservative profession. So generally, if you survey people that sit on panels a lot, 8 or 9 out of 10 will say that they don't favour seeing a photo on the CV. It's seen as flashy, it's seen as a bit over the top. So that's the first reason. The second reason is a stronger one, in my opinion, and that's about avoiding unnecessary bias. Now, maybe you're going for a job where you're already known to the panel, so they know what you look like. Fine. But often you're going for a job where at least one or two of the panel members haven't actually seen you. If you put a photo on your CV, they will see you and they'll start to infer things about you just based on your looks. That's human psychology, that's human behavior. So you don't want the panel inventing stories about you before you even get the chance to talk to them. Why give them, why take away your chance to tell your story by giving them a visual clue? So that's the second problem. The third problem, which we'll come back to, which is another key misconception, is actually this photo takes up time to look at and actually distracts from other things on the CV. And when you know how long it takes reviewers to look at CVs, you would agree with me that it's probably best to remove it because it's taking up vital time. So that's the first problem. The second problem here is the name. The hero of your CV should be your name. And I would recommend putting doctor as well. So I would not even put curriculum vitae there. I'd get rid of the photo and I'd make Dr. Kate Jones as big as you could across that line. Why is that the case? Well, when the reviewer sees your CV and reviews it, you want them to remember your name. Hopefully they're putting it in the interview pile, but that's the key vital information. Two things the CV needs to achieve. One is to move you from application into the interview basket. And then the second thing is to give you some memory in terms of the chair of the selection panel in particular. So that's the second problem. Now, there's actually some good stuff in the CV. It's actually, it's nicely set out. The colors aren't too clashy. The font's good. Lots of white space. It's a nicely structured CV. It's in the correct order. And we have contact details, which is very important. You want to make it easy for the employer to find you, to contact you. But something that's missing here at the top level is the lack of short qualifications. So many people kind of worry about, oh, look, my education history is better than my work history. Should I not put that first? Well, no, what you want to do is actually just put your short qualifications on your front page. And what you'll find, generally speaking, is that for most people, once you've done a year as an intern and definitely after you've done a year as a resident, you won't be able to get education on your front page. So you want to actually, because you have to put your work history down first. So you want to actually give them the short qualifications. Again, when we're scanning these CVs, we're wanting to see particular information. We want to know, do you have a medical degree? Do you have any other qualifications? And if you are an international medical graduate, things like what's your AMC certificate status? What's your visa status? It's also good to put your medical registration number down because that helps them, because that's often something they need to look at as well. So give that vital info because they're key parts of the selection criteria that you need often either you have to be moved into the interview phase. So just make it easy for them. So that's the third problem there, not having short qualifications. The fourth problem is, whilst there is a personal statement, or what I like to call the career goal statement, which I think you should definitely have on your CV, it's very short and it's really only focused on the what's in it for me factor. So describing why this particular person wants the job. It doesn't go on to say, if they want to do surgery, what they've been doing so far to become a surgical trainee, to sort of differentiate yourself out from someone who's just decided that that's what they want to do, to show a level of sincerity about that. And the other thing is also to show how you can add value to the employer. Remember, you're selling yourself as a candidate. This is not, in most cases, the recruitment is not about them wanting you, although that sometimes does happen. It's more about you wanting them, and they're thinking about you as an employee and what sort of value you can add. What challenges can you solve? If you are my registrar or you are the consultant in my team, will you be taking some of the work off me? Would you actually be contributing? Can I be reassured working with you? That's really what it's all about. So that's the fourth problem there. The statement needs a bit more words. It's actually, if you read this CV, it's lacking some good stuff that's going to be buried on the second and third and fourth pages that could come in here. and it's not showing how you can add value for the employer. And then the last problem is the work experience, or I like to call this work achievements, and you'll see why I mean this in a second. Whilst it's a comprehensive list here, it's extremely dull and boring. As an employer, I know what interns do. I don't need you to tell me the exact dates that you worked in your terms and who your supervisors were and what your duties were. I can kind of make that up myself. And there's nothing in here that actually describes what you did that was out of the ordinary, that, you know, would make me excited about you as a candidate. So I see this a bit too much, particularly at the more junior level where you're doing lots of rotations. There's too much description about, you know, first term was cardiology, second term was emergency medicine. These are the dates. This is the hospitals I worked in. You can shorten that up by just saying you were an intern for a year, your terms were in X, Y, Z, and then go on to give me a bit of flavour about the things that you achieved during that year. You know, were you on a quality committee? Did you present something at grand rounds? Did you help review a roster? You know, whatever it was, were you given some good feedback in one of your terms from families or consultants? You know, whatever it is that had you stand out. Don't lose that opportunity on the front page to sell yourself. Even as an intern, you can actually make yourself, even though you haven't had a long medical career so far, you can actually make yourself more interesting by using narrative, not just in the personal career goal statement, but also in your work history. And for medical students, particularly also in your education, you can talk about some of the special things you did through your medical degree. So the other 5 issues with that CV. So I'm just going to get back to the slides here. Excuse me for a second, I'll just take a sip of water. And we're coming up to question time very quickly. My slides are taking a while to load. Actually, I think I need to stop sharing. There we go, that might work. Just try that again. Okay. Yeah, so 3 big misconceptions in CVs. Firstly, photos are not helpful. Secondly, a CV actually means an adjusted resume with a few critical elements. And the third thing, and I'll show you a video about this shortly, but we'll get on to questions first. Your CV is actually scanned. It's not read the first time. It's usually for only about 6 to 8 seconds, which is why it's vital that you get all that good stuff on the first page. But I'll pause there, and there are probably some questions at this point. So feel free to add some questions into the chat box there. I'm just checking YouTube as well. Do you have to include your ATAR? You can. You don't have to. I don't think it really matters very much because you've already gotten through medical school. So, you know, if it was a good, you know, if you won a prize or something like that, it was particularly good. Yes, you know, you might if you thought it sold you as a candidate. But remember, you know, whilst success, I mean, you know, to get into medical school, you have to be particularly reasonably intelligent anyway. But you know, whilst educational success does predict future educational success, employers are often looking for other things as well. So, yeah, look, my answer would be you can. Can you include qualifications, e.g. commencing a master's? Yeah, look, I think it's useful to, in your education history, even if you haven't finished something, put down the degree that you're currently undertaking, what you've been studying within that degree, and you can try and link it back to adding value. So, for example, if your degree involves some learning about statistical analysis, you know, maybe that's helpful for the health service. So maybe you can do some stats for the research team or something like that. Yeah. Other questions? I sometimes have questions about prior work history. And look, as I said, I generally suggest including whatever jobs you've done before, because I actually find it interesting, and I think I feel like you're a more rounded individual if you've done some of that stuff. Perfect example, someone in a previous webinar asked me about, well, I was an executive assistant once. Should I put that down? Well, yes, I would, and I would put it in, where it sits in the chronology of things. But if you think about what EAs do, they're vital members of teams, and they're usually very highly organised and good project managers. And I, as an employer, would recognise that, so I'd see that as a strength. Should we put in citizenship status, even if prospectively, i.e., PR in process? Yeah, look, I think Barbie, that's a very good thing to do. Even if you are an Australian citizen and you think it's obvious, you might want to put that down. The reason being is, when you're applying online, sometimes when you apply online, you have to sort of indicate whether you're a citizen or permanent resident anyway, and it might knock you out from the job if you're not. But there are only certain jobs that doctors on visas or without even a visa can apply for in Australia. So that's a good thing to include, so that you don't get potentially rejected because they think you're not actually eligible for the position. Given people only scan CVs, is there any phrases to include to catch attention? Yes, there are, and I'll show you how people review CVs, and I'll show you it differs from reviewer to reviewer, but I'll show you the bits that they look at, and I think you'll understand a little bit more then shortly. I'll just give it a couple more seconds to see if there's any more questions there. Check the YouTube chat box. What if CV only has one page? Is it good or bad? Well, it's probably more a resume by definition, Abertonian. I don't think it's bad, but I would suspect with a bit more assistance, you could probably flesh it out a bit more. And I suspect it's becoming more just a list of jobs you've done and, not giving more information. There's always more info you can give within your CV or resume. So probably I suspect without seeing it, it's probably something that you could work on improving and giving a bit more narrative to. That's the thing. If your CV is particularly short, it probably needs a bit more storytelling in it. Now, I generally don't see enough storytelling in CVs. Sometimes I do see an essay on the first page, and that's probably going a little bit too far, in my opinion. You definitely want to get your first job on the first page. You don't want to take it all up with a personal career goal statement. In regards to leadership positions and experiences, how many years back are appropriate to include? So the answer to that is as long back as you think it is relevant to the job. And we won't get into this tonight, but it's a very good idea to store your career history somewhere. Make a comprehensive CV somewhere, or use something like LinkedIn, because sometimes you come up to jobs and you think, oh, what else can I say about that? And then you remember, or if you go through your LinkedIn profile or your big CV, you remember there's something from 10 years back that you can throw in, which for the last 3 jobs you thought that's just not relevant. Is there a need to explain our roles in leadership and mentoring roles, work experience, etc.? Yes, I think you should talk about what you did and what you achieved. Hopefully you can come up with some, cold hard stats. That's the gold if you can. Like if, for example, if you were on a quality safety committee and you were involved in looking at the falls risk for the year and you managed to reduce falls risk by 20%, put that down. That's just gold. That shows an employer that you can achieve stuff. What I get a little bit jaded by is people saying they were the chair of the whatever committee. And I think, well, okay, lots of committees sit and meet and they don't actually achieve anything. What did you actually get done in that time? So yes, I think it's a bit dangerous to just say I was the president of the MedSoc or things like that, because without actually explaining what you achieved in that time. Okay, we might keep moving forward, and we're going to just switch over to a video. So this, I'll just get it up actually. So this is a very short video. We showed this at the careers workshop last year, and I've de-identified the person in here, but this is someone who actually is employed in an admin and education role, and they are actually reviewing real CVs for a job. These are international doctors applying for a job in Australia. And this is how long it takes an experienced CV reviewer to review CVs to determine whether they make it to the interview stage or make it into the non-interview pile. Here we go. So starting off, 1 second, 2 seconds, interview poll on my right, your left, I guess. Yep. Made it. 3 seconds, reviewing. Nope. Nope. So what she's doing here is scanning for information that can help with what's called the cull process. And so it can be that cutthroat. You know, if you haven't clearly met all the eligibility criteria, that's it. We've got 100 people, we can only interview 10. You're out. So that's why you have to get the key detail on your first page, because you can see, you know, basically what they were doing was looking at the front page. Then if I couldn't find it, I'd flick through and then go to the end. In some cases, the end bit is also vital because that's where the referees are, and it depends on whether you've got referee recognition or not, basically. So I will go back to the slides. Stop sharing. Sorry, it takes a little bit of time to switch between here. Just try that again. Now, a question that also often comes up is about CV templates. So I'm just wondering, maybe you can put something in the chat box there if anyone's had to fill in a CV template or it's been suggested that they fill in one of the CV templates. So interestingly, I'm from New South Wales. New South Wales Health does not have a recommended CV template. For Queensland Health, we had to. Well, that's actually not correct, Anna. If you read the fine detail, now they will try and get you to do this, but you'll actually see that it's actually a guide and recommended. Victoria is actually the only state that I've come across where you have to fill it in. I don't think I've got the example of that one there on your screen, and that's for the Postgraduate Medical Council of Victoria. So they actually say you must fill it in according to the template, but every other one, if you read the fine print, then it actually says this is a guide. And so I would strongly advise you to avoid the template. The best way to not stand out is to have a CV that looks like half the other people or more that are putting in applications. Some of these, I mean, the Queensland one's actually reasonably nice looking. Some of them are pretty horrible. And so you're sort of wedging yourself to a pretty bad format as well. They all stem actually, well, most of them actually stem from this APRA standard format for CVs. So I'm just going to hop over to my screen again, and I'll just show you something that's quite interesting here. Where am I? I think it's here. Share. So actually, this is the webpage for APRA. Remember, APRA is the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency. So it's for all health professions. And you can see that this is the recommended format. And it's a guide to what you should include in the CV that you provide to APRA. So if you look at the Queensland template and pretty much all the other ones, they're literally exactly based on this. And the reason here is this is for international health practitioners. And it's about key information that APRA wants to collect so that they can properly assess someone from overseas. So it's done for that reason. And I think because of that, there's certain things that they ask for, but there's lots of other things there that they also don't ask for. And so it's the start of a format. So by all means, make sure you address all those issues. But you can see that all that there would be normally addressed in a normal CV. Use your own format, unless it's specifically prescribed that you have to use that particular CV template. So, oops, stop sharing. Apologies, my slides taking a little while to come up. I'll just try again. Okay, so let's get to the front page, and someone asked me about what do people scan for. So this is that CV that I showed you before in a different format. You can see now that we've got the name as the hero, the short qualifications underneath. So that's the key stuff people look for. Contact details. So when I'm reviewing a CV, that's what I look for first: the name, what their qualifications are. That helps me know whether I should. It's a bit like reviewing an article. You know, you want to, most articles you decide aren't valid for your context. So you're looking for information that would help you exclude a CV in the first pass. So that's some of the key stuff. Then I do look at the career statement, and I have a look through there, and I have a look for sort of things like words like rural, or what sort of medicine they want to go into, whether they've looked at the requirements for whatever the specialty training post that they're going into. That's a good catchphrase to throw down. So I kind of scan that and I'll note certain words, and I might do that for a couple of seconds. But then I'll be really interested in the work experience, and I want to know where they worked and what they did. And that's pretty much it. I'll go through the sort of most recent job, maybe the one before that, maybe the one before that. And if I'm reasonably convinced at that point this person should be further considered, then that's the job done. I might hop over to the back and look at which referees they have. I don't tend to put as much weight on referees in terms of getting through the interview pile. I just want to talk to them. But some people like to sort of see who your referees are as some sort of, you know, if it's someone with some brand recognition that might attach some value to it. That's not my thing, but some like that. And that literally takes me 6 or 8 seconds. Now, this is not to say that, sorry, I'll just go back there. This is not to say that the CV is not read in more length at some process, by the way. Often when we're getting down to the interview phase, we'll spend a bit more time with it and we'll go into it in more depth. But remember, the primary aim of your CV is to not excite the interview panel when they're reading it, although it's useful if it can do that as well, but to actually get you to that interview. So, as I said, the name should be the hero, short qualifications summary, make sure they can contact you, other pertinent quick information like your citizenship or AMC certificate, etc. Then a career statement, which should take up about 1/3 of the first page, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less. It should say where you're headed, how you're getting there, how you've sort of pursued that path that you want to head into, and quickly switch into how you can add value. And it is an opportunity to highlight the golden nuggets that are in your CV, but unfortunately, because of the order of things, don't quite make it to the front page. So, you know, if you did something exciting in medical school and that's not on your front page, you can highlight that in your career statement. If you've got a particular skill that you think is relevant, then highlight that in your career statement. If some of your research you think is going to be relevant to that particular job, highlight it in your career statement. So that's kind of the thing that you should do there, Barbie, in terms of using your career statement. Pull all the good stuff, make sure it's tailored. Wherever possible, you should always try and tailor your CV to the job. That's not always possible with annual medical recruitment because sometimes the CV is used for more than one position. But if at all possible as a doctor, every time you go for a job, review your CV and make sure it's tailored. It's addressing the selection criteria for that position, particularly in your career statement. And then use narrative to explain your work history and your educational history as well. And that's pretty much what most people can manage to get on their first page. I'll show you a few tricks to get some other stuff on there towards the end. That's got to do with use of a second column, but that's kind of what you should be aiming for. Now, people like to sort of focus a little bit on the career goal statement and find a little bit more about that. So we'll dive into that. So here's an example from a pediatric job. I wish to pursue a career in community pediatrics with a research focus on improving rates of obesity. So that's what they want to do. In order to pursue my goal, I've worked as a JMO to obtain placements in pediatrics, and then done some voluntary stuff. You know, that's good stuff to highlight in your CV. This is based on, based on some applications I've seen. And then a key thing, as I said, is to sort of switch it over to show that you're aware that the role involves study and passing exams. And so, a good phrase to throw in at the end is that you've begun your process with training, whatever that might be for the particular college. And here's another example from critical care. This person enjoys the challenge of working with unwell and complex patients, has to pursue their goal is obtain placement in the clinical care specialties, which isn't particularly easy when you're a JMO, and done some courses off their own bat. And then you can see how they've switched it around to sort of add value. So they've got some ultrasound skills, which could be of use to the position and the hospital, and something that's probably unique or reasonably unique for this particular candidate versus other candidates going for the job. So things that you think make you a unique candidate for the job are good to throw in your career goal example. Sorry, your career goal statement, sorry. All right, so let's just go a little bit deeper in terms of how you might be able to get some help for your CV. So, as I said, if you read my blog posts and you watch the videos, I'm pretty confident you can put together a pretty good CV. I've seen people do it already. But if you are wanting some extra help, we do offer some courses. There's an offer there at the moment. We're going to have another special offer shortly. So this is the CV course that we've put together. It's got 90 minutes of video content. Some people like to binge watch it. Some people like to do it in their own pace. Currently, it's available for $90, but with the 25% off, that's 60 something, I think, dollars for you. We also offer a CV review and CV check. So that's kind of like if you pay someone to do your CV for you or review it and do it for you, it's going to cost you a minimum $250 for a doctor, maybe a bit more. This one's priced at $110, and we basically go through and give you some structured feedback on the elements and some comments so that you can yourself address issues in your CV and fix it up yourself. So it's a more affordable process. And then you might also want to consider using a CV builder. So I'll just show you a couple of things with this visual CV program. So I'm just going to hop back to the web here. So that was the Kate Jones we saw before. This is another version of it. So with these programs, you can do a bunch of things. So you can sort of add text in here. You can move things up and down. So you can sort of play with things and move it around. And if you don't like the look of the CV that you've got there, then if you pay for the pro version, you get a bunch of templates. If you're just using the free version, you get 3. So here's what they look like. The 3 basic ones, the free ones are down there at the bottom. So you might want to use that one just to see what it looks like. So, that's actually, so you can see here, this is an example of double columns where you can put some extra good stuff about you on your CV. Or you might use one that's here, which is my favorite, which is the Avant, which again gives you a second column to sort of work with and get some more stuff on your CV whilst still making it look nice. And then what you can do with them is you can download them as a PDF. You can actually share the link to someone and track how many times it's looked at, but they also do print out as a PDF. And if there's page breaks or things like that, you can adjust those as well in the program. So they can be quite a useful thing to do. They're all, there's a bunch of them around. There's this one, there's Zeddy, there's Resume Maker. They all give you a free version to try it out. And then if you want to get some of the templates or want to take the branding off, it's usually a little bit more. In this case, I think it's about $36 US for 3 months, which is usually about the time it takes you to apply for a job and get one. And then you can switch it off again. So again, that's quite an affordable option if you're wanting to go a little bit further. If you are interested in using Visual CV, I've sent you the link. So I'll just stop the sharing again. I'll send you the link. That is an affiliate link. So if you end up buying it, you're not paying any more, but some of that returns to us at Advanced Med to help us in our project. Let's try that again. Just trying to get the slides take a while to come back. Sorry about that. Yeah, so that's Visual CV, and as I was saying, this is the pricing option. So Pro is $12 a month for quarterly, and rather than the starter where you can have up to 2 CVs. With this Pro plan, you can have 22 CVs sitting there with a bunch of more templates and taking the branding off. So a reminder that our courses have a coupon there, which is available for 48 hours after the webinar. And we do have a special bonus as well. If anyone would like to purchase now, we're actually giving a job skills bundle, which is the CV course, as well as the job application course, as well as the interview skills course, which normally sells for $190, but 50% off for the next 30 minutes. As a special bonus to you guys for participating in the webinar. Now, if you've already bought the CV course, by the way, I'll refund you that if you come back in and get the job skills bundle, so don't be worried about that. So that offer is now live for the next 30 minutes. Yeah, so a reminder, we've got 3 courses that cover the full cycle of the job application process. I think they're much more affordable options than, for example, employing a professional expert to do things for you. In doing the courses, you get access to the expert, that's me within the course, and it helps you to apply for jobs with confidence and prepare for the interview more effectively. Okay, final question time. Let's see if there's any questions. There's a hi in YouTube. Hi, DQ. Is WordPress really not recommended? I think you can actually generate a fairly nice looking CV using Microsoft Word or Pages or whatever. There's no problem with doing that. I'm just pointing out that if you're not a particularly good at setting things out graphically, or you can't, I mean, some people, you can buy a template for Word. Sometimes these CV builders can be a little bit easier to work with. And as I said, they're becoming quite affordable. So, it's another option there. Some people will kind of hand it off to a professional CV writer. And as I said, they might charge you a couple $100 or maybe more to put it in a really nice format for you if you want to go that far. I think, it's a bit like cooking or being a chef. It needs to look good to attract the eye, But obviously then that's just to get them to eat it. And obviously the content also has to be there. So you definitely want to spend your time making sure the content's in the right order, as I said, has good narrative in it and sells your achievements. But there's no point doing that if it's got lots of different fonts and different font type sizes and the indenting's off, etc. The problem with submitting a CV that even has 1 or 2 typographical errors is that the panel, if they pick it up, might think, well, there's a lack of detail. So, another key tip is to actually get someone else to review your CV for you. Yep, fair. Okay. Other questions? Some questions we do get asked about what else do we do, and we do provide, as we say, a CV review. We're actually currently piloting a CV do-over service, and probably we'll add a LinkedIn service to that as well. That's becoming a big issue for doctors. So if anyone's interested in that, we may be able to sort of put you in the pilot program. So let us know. You can contact us on info@advancedmed.com.au if that's of interest to you. Is it a must to write the year of graduation and the year of internship? Yes, you should give accurate dates for all your qualifications and jobs. Not down to like the day of the month, but at least the month of the year. Does one CV format fit all specialties? No. A great example of that is I was once interviewing on a panel for medical administration trainees and had to really question why we're interviewing one particular candidate who basically wrote a personal statement that they wanted to be a cardiothoracic surgeon. And we spent half the interview talking to them about their frustration about not being able to get into cardiothoracic surgery. So they did not, they shouldn't have even been interviewed in the first place. So you have to tailor your CV to the job that you're going for. Now, as I said, at the annual medical recruitment phase, it's a little bit harder because your CV might have to sort of address 1 or 2 or 3 different jobs. But I would generally say make it tailored enough for the one job that you're wanting, and then think about whether it's okay enough for the other jobs that might be your plan B or plan C. So hopefully that answers your question. But that is a real reason why people get overlooked. And particularly if you're in IMG, I would say, I know it's hard. I know you're submitting CVs all the time, but if you can take the time to actually tailor your CV to the job, put a little bit in about the actual hospital you're applying for and why you might be good for them. You never know. You might just get a call one day to come in and interview for an RMO position because they've got a gap. Another question we get is about private coaching, and yes, we do offer that, and we'll be doing some webinars around the interview process. So again, I do a lot of work with candidates around coaching with the application, but also particularly focusing in on preparing for the interview. And if you sign up for the package, you get one of the courses that I've just mentioned, your pick of those. And we do also run workshops. We're actually running a couple of workshops, private events in Dubbo and Orange in May, and then Sydney is our main workshop, which is now open to the public. I'll just show you some of the people in the lineup for that. So for that workshop, we've got Dr. James Edwards from On the Wards, Dr. Anna Sellis, who's one of the key training doctors at GP Synergy, and Dr. Amandeep Hansra from Creative Careers in Medicine. They've all presented previously, and they give excellent talks on their topic areas around the application and recruitment process. So within that workshop, it's geared towards people applying for annual medical recruitment, and it basically takes you from researching the job, applying for the job, putting your CV together, preparing for the interview, relaxing into the interview, and then tackling interview questions and all the things in between. And so every event has been highly popular and generally sold out. So the tickets are now being sold on the website for that. And of course, I will be there too. So I'll just see if there are any. So there is a question in YouTube. How important is it to have a LinkedIn profile? So I actually wrote a blog post about that, and this is my last slide, so I might just hop over to the web and show you a couple more things. So where are we? Yep. Nope, that's the wrong one. Now we're going duplicate. Sorry about that. Yeah, there's lots of information on our website about various things. I wrote a post about LinkedIn, which has actually been quite popular. I think we're on the wrong page here. There's the one about the template, and there's one about the CV blog posts. The thing about LinkedIn is it ranks highly in Google. So one thing that happens is, there you go. One thing that happens in Google is, well, one thing that happens when you go for a job, I should say, is that they will generally these days Google you to see if there's something they should know about. This comes after the Dr. Patel issue that we had in Australia, where if they'd Googled him, they would have noticed that there were problems. So employers are now generally required to Google you to see if there's any sort of reputational problem or issues. LinkedIn ranks highly on Google. So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you're at the mercy of what other people generally write about you, which may not be a particular issue if you're a trainee doctor. You may not rank at all, but most consultants might very well rank using one of those patient feedback apps like Health Engine or things like that. So you don't want the first thing that comes up on Google to be some patient blogging about how you were a horrible person when they came to see you. So a way to counter that is to control your reputation on social media and the web. And look, you know, it used to be that you could just stay silent and that was it. But the problem is everyone now talks about you, even if you're not involved in this. So I would definitely highly recommend establishing a LinkedIn profile, going through the basic steps of what needs to be in the profile, making sure it's up to date. It doesn't take a lot of time to do this. You don't have to get involved in the actual social network of LinkedIn. And one of the good things about LinkedIn is you can really control how much interaction you have. It's not as insipid as, say, Facebook. So yes, my basic answer would be I'd strongly suggest that doctors should have LinkedIn profiles. If there's one social media that you should probably be involved in, it's LinkedIn. For a number of reasons, but in particular the fact that it helps you to manage your reputation online. And so just a couple of things I'll show you while we're on the web there. That's my blog post. This is just an example of the course, the CV course. So you get a lot of them got videos explaining elements. This is the one about the career goal statement. You can see here there's also some information for you and further examples of career goal statements. And you generally get lesson notes to download. And just to prove that there's interaction and me answering things, there you can see this gives you access to me. You know, you buy the course, you can ask as many questions as you want of me basically in it. So for me, it's an economical way of me spending my time to help people. It helps to support our website, but it also means that you're getting access to my expertise. And I'm able to go into things in a little bit more depth than, say, for example, maybe on the YouTube channel or if you're in one of the Facebook groups that we run as well. So just to show you that. Yeah. Okay. So I'll just see if there's any final questions from participants. Thank you, Anna. Yep, thank you very much. It was really helpful. Thank you. I'm glad you got some good stuff out of it. Is the course... I'm not sure what the question, Tali, was. Is the course ready? So one question we have about the course is, you know, when can you enroll in it? You can basically enroll in it at any time. And as I said, ask me questions in the various posts. It's aimed for everyone. So there's content in there. I'll go back actually to show you this. So there's a syllabus for it. So you can see here the syllabus. There's a main course, introduction about compiling a CV, what the elements of a CV should be, career goal statement, etc. And then there are medical student tips, IMG tips, and then tips for senior practitioners. So there's additional elements, and then some bonus mini lessons as well. So one tackling social media, one about the Queensland Health CV template. And we keep adding elements to it based on feedback and new things that are happening as well. So once you purchase it, it's yours, available forever, lifetime access. So you can come back to it, assuming we're still going in 5 years as a senior doctor, and use it again. So hopefully that answers your question. And I've had lots of IMGs use it and find it very helpful, by the way. No problems. I'm just making myself another glass of water. Look, there's no other questions. I'll thank everyone for joining tonight and wish you a good evening. There will be a replay available. Thank you for your support. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube, please do so. If you haven't joined one of our Facebook groups, please do so. And we really value your support, even if it's just helping us out in terms of watching the content and reviewing the content or sharing this information with others. And look forward to talking with you all throughout the course of the year as we get further into the job application process in Australia. Goodbye for now.